Alright, in this video I'm going to go over the rebuilding of the Trackhawk transfer case using the Pro Demand manual to give me the specs and instructions. I've already started on this a little bit. Took off the output shaft, which is the first step. You take the nut, pull off that flange. Next step, you will be removing the encoder, which we require removing of the heat shield. I've already taken that off, and the encoder. I marked where it's lined up. Probably don't need it, doesn't say anything about it, but I usually do stuff to be sure. If I am not sure, to make some kind of markings. From there, there's a snap ring on the encoder driver. You'll just remove it. Usually keep everything organized, have the shaft back here, the encoder. From there, you'll remove the shift shaft motor. Okay, got this shift motor out. It's just an O-ring, so it's just a little tight to work it out. Wasn't sure, but just a little bit tight. O-rings type of seal, just pry it out nice and even and square. From there, you'll remove all the bolts that hold the two halves together. I've already taken some out. Now there's 3 on this side that have the heat shield or stud style mounts. I've marked them. If you remember it, you don't need to, but I just marked mine just so I know where they go back together at. All right, I got the rest of the bolts out. There's 3 spots. There's a gap in here, here, and one more on the top up here. Just used 2 pry bars together and spread it to break the cases apart at this point. Between the silicone and a couple dowels, that's all that's really holding it. With the 2 dowels, it's pretty easy to get to bind up a little bit. Once you get past that, this will come right up and off. So at this point, the manual calls for you to remove this thrust washer. I always put stuff back together, or I actually put everything onto this paper as I take them off, so that way I know which order they go back in. So then next, you'll remove the oil pump. It slides up. There we go. The new kit comes with a pump and a screen, so I'm not going to set that to the side with the rest of my reuse parts because I got brand new. Now it calls for the magnet, which a little bit of debris, nothing major to be worried about, but inspect yours, make sure you get some surprises. It's a good telltale sign if something more than just some clutch packs are needed or not. From there, remove the worm drive gear. The clutch cam. Now these are all have a major keyway here, so it goes back together without any issues of being in the wrong spot or not. And here you remove the clutch upper snap ring, pretty large snap ring, outer snap ring. Snap ring is pretty heavy duty, so you'll need some pretty big snap ring pliers. These ones are already struggling, and they're an okay size. Okay, I had to go get some larger snap ring pliers. Pretty heavy duty snap ring here. So yeah, make sure you have some decent sized ones. I had to get some bigger ones for this. So you'll take that snap ring off, then you'll take off this thrust washer, or clutch shim they call it. So you'll see there's a shim, and then they call this next piece the thrust collar. And then you'll take off, it's a upper thrust bearing sleeve and the thrust bearing. Then the upper shift lever will come off. And there's 3 balls here on this lower shaft. You want to get them out of there. And your lower lever. Sorry, just getting through all the paperwork. Again, you'll have another thrust washer and thrust bearing and washer. We call this the clutch apply piston. Just reaching back in here. I keep stacking stuff back up in the order it comes out, so that way going back together will be seamless, hopefully. Clutch return spring, this is called. Okay, I used some picks and removed all the clutch packs, but if you can get in there and get a good grip on the sleeve, it will pull all the clutch packs out with this drum assembly. So a little tip there. There will be another washer here. And then a snap ring, which you'll have to remove. Well, actually on this one there is no snap ring, just the thrust washer. It shows a thrust washer and a snap ring in the manual, but it only has a thrust washer on this one. From there, you would remove these two drums and the chain assembly. It slides up as assembly, and then from there you would go ahead and knock out the shift spacer, would come off. Remove this whole shift shaft assembly. Pull your input shaft out. It would remove from there. Snap rings to replace your bearings if needed. This front output stub axle would come out. I'll be removing that to get to the seal. I'll replace my seal since I have them in the kit. All right, for those of you that are looking to rebuild the whole thing and replace all your seals, this one is your output stub axle or stub shaft. Slides in that way. There is a outer snap ring. You just take the snap ring off. This will slide out. Get to your seal, knock it out, drive it back in. On the input, you'll remove the drive, like the internal shaft. This, you have to pull this seal out. According to the manual, a screw type or pry type to get this seal out. Once you get this seal out, there's another snap ring like I just showed you, an outer style snap ring that can come out, and you can take that out and you get to the bearings. I don't think this transfer case had much mileage on it. The clutch pack still looks really good. Seal looks good, no signs of any kind of weepage or anything, so I'm going to leave this alone. I will replace the front and rear output seals and clean up the case and get it all ready for reassembly. Alright, for the sake of time, I went ahead and cleaned the surface here, replaced this front seal for the front output. Simple enough, take it out and then drive it back in, slide it back in, put the snap ring back on. Cleaned the rest of this up. Again, like I said, I didn't mess with the input side of it. Looked good, so I just came in here and start ready to put it back together. Say simple, put that back on. We're gonna go ahead and start putting the shift shaft stuff back in here. This just slides in and out. Just took it out before I went to put in the seals. So this will just come back in here. I knew this was indexed this way from earlier. Now we'll put the chain assembly back on. It just slides in, no special keyway, so they could go in, nothing to worry about for indexing. So basically we're just gonna put it back together in reverse of what we took apart. Be your spacer. I say in this case there was no snap ring as it showed earlier. We'll put this inner drum back in, and now I'll be putting the clutch packs in. I'm gonna soak them real quick in oil so they're not dry, any issues there. The kit I got for this assembly was from Southern Hot Rod. Came with clutches, steels, input, both outputs, and the shift motor seals. Should be everything you need. The O-rings for the motor itself and the phaser did not come with it. If you need those, you'll have to go to the Dodge dealer and order those up. But besides that, it came with a new pump, pickup, and the Mopar seals and silicone. So a great package deal to get everything you need to freshen this up. I'm gonna get in there and exchange these seals or oil the clutch packs. All right, so the clutch packs in. Went ahead and soaked them in a little oil. You'll start with a friction disc, friction steel, and then you'll have the very top one will end up being a friction also. At this point, you're going to put your return spring in. So now you'll go backwards of your whole assembly here from the apply piston, then your lower race with the grooves, thrust bearing, lower shift lever, balls, and then the upper shift lever. Then the last thrust bearing, upper bearing race, collar, and then shim, and then your snap ring. So I'll go through those in order here in a second. All right, here we go. I just flipped over all my parts that were in order. We'll start with the apply piston. Lower bearing race, which is already on here, and then your roller bearing. Just check it, make sure there's no debris in it, any starting to fail. Get that centered. We do the lower shift lever. Same thing, I'll check this area, make sure there's no debris in good condition. Sit down there. Rides on the bottom of this shaft, so you want it back down here. Point, check your grooves, put your bearings in. Everything's kind of centered there. Check your top one, same thing with your grooves, bearing, surface ball, roller bearing in the center there. This will come on down, same thing right over that shaft. Everybody's happy. Next will be the thrust bearing. Same thing, check them for any damage, missing, pitting. I'm gonna go ahead and apply the upper race and the watt of bearing assembly thrust plate all in one. Last step is your thrust washer, or clutch shim we call it in the book here, and then our snapper. Remember, this is that pretty heavy duty one, so you're gonna need some bigger snap ring pliers. Just so you don't know, the snap rings typically have a sharp edge and a beveled edge from being stamped. You always want the square edge towards the load. These snap ring pliers are just don't open quite far enough to make it easy. At this point, it's over the shoulder, so I should be able to walk it down. Be careful. All right, so instead of having you watch me struggle, I went to turn it off and worked with it. A couple things. This applied piston needs to float, so sometimes the bearings inside, and especially this upper thrust washer, it could bind up on the groove, so you have to like wiggle it around, twist it, and then once you see it, it can slide up and down. Make sure it's floating, because that'll fight you to get this snap ring down into that groove. So that was what was going on, was this wasn't sliding down into the pockets for everything and binding up on the groove, so then the snap ring didn't want to slide. So got that down, snap ring's in, be sure you check it, it's always seated, and then you see everything works, that works, everything still floats. So that's what you're shooting for, is no binding and everything's working freely. All right, so at this point we'll go ahead and put in the clutch cam. This will go on like this. Again, there should be a master slot there for the keyway here in the shaft. Your drive gear here. Install the magnet. You wipe it off. Obviously it's very difficult to get everything off it, but you want to get the big stuff off here. Slide it back in its slot. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and install the new oil pump. All right, so now we're going to install the oil pump. The pickup goes in right here, right where the magnet is, there's a little slot, slides in. Make sure you transfer your O-ring from your original pump and pickup to the new one. It'll slide on this way. There's two flat spots to index with the shaft. Go down. Just like that. And this will go back in here. Just be careful not to cut it. Just slide in there. Everybody's happy it's seated fully. At this point, we're gonna put the output shaft thrust washer back on. Like that. And now you'll make sure this is all clean, no oil. Run a bead of the Mopar or your own favorite silicone around the mating surface here, and then we'll slide on the rear case cover assembly. Before you put the housing cover on the back half, you'll want to take out the, technically it is called the transfer case worm shaft. I didn't do it. It says it could potentially cause damage. I don't appear it did, but per the manual, pull this out, and then after you put this on, torqued it, then this will go in, and then your seal will go over that. All right, so now got the silicone on there, as you can see, ready to slide the back half onto it. Slide down, up over the back pump area. A couple things, you'll have your selector shaft in here, your output shaft bearing, that's indexed, there we go. Line up with the dowels, just like that. Now you'll go ahead and run in all your bolts, and we'll torque it. All right, so the next step's gonna be putting the shift motor in. I've already lubed up the O-ring, so it should install a little bit easier. So now we're going to put this last snap ring on that goes up here on the shift shaft selector. Probably have to pull it up a little bit to get it the groove exposed all the way. Make sure you get that all the way up, snap ring all the way down and seated. All right, so there's that. All right, so all right, on the encoder, there's actually a pointer on it. It's right on the edge here. Make sure you wipe it off, you'll be able to see it. There'll be an arrow and a line in the bushing. And the arrow's over there, so you just line those up and then you'll install it. Same thing, put oil on the O-ring so it goes on easier. Like that. Make sure you torque all these to factory specs. So at this point, we'll put the output onto the shaft here. And we'll slide in, be careful, try to center as much as you can as you install it so you don't damage the seal. There's a large O-ring that goes down in there, and then you'll install the nut. Same thing, you'll torque that to spec, and at that point you should be done. Now once you're done with this, you put it back in the vehicle, obviously fluid. There is a reprogramming synchronization that needs to be done by the dealership with a scan tool. So you can't just put it in and drive it and think you're all done. There is actually more to it that needs to be programmed by the dealership to let it know where it's at, preloads, and sync itself to the factory specs. All right, hope that helps you out. Thank you.